Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we're going to talk about investment. This is building on some stuff we've been talking about growth. And there's a question about, okay, how do you get growth? You need to invest to build your economy. Invest, let's grow. And I think it's important to understand, how does investment work? Because I think there's a very simplistic understanding of investment, which is if you want to invest, you need to give loads of money to rich people, because who does investments? Rich people. If we give loads of money to rich people, we'll get investments and we'll grow. If you look at the last 20, 30 years, when the wealth of the rich has grown really significantly, investment has actually fallen in many countries, especially here in the UK. So why is it that when you give money to rich people, it doesn't necessarily lead to investment? But the first thing I would say is, when a rich person invests, it doesn't necessarily lead to the creation of new productive capacity. So for example, if I make £2 million and I use it to buy all your mum's houses, it doesn't really do much to improve the economy. So rich people can simply invest by buying your assets. And this leads us to thinking in a little bit of a more nuanced way about investment. And for me, when you want to create investment to create new productive capacity, there's basically two things you need. Yes, you do need somebody to basically fund that investment, which is basically, I'm going to use the resources that I have to create something new, to build something new, to build a new factory, to build a new windmill, to build a new diamond mine, whatever, to build a new office block. You need somebody to say, I'm going to provide the resources. And in our modern society, which is very unequal, that is often the rich. But when you look back at the post-war period when investment was much higher, it could be government, or it could be, a group of ordinarily non-super wealthy people putting their resources towards building new things. But it doesn't just require people to fund the investment. You also need profitable investments to exist. So I essentially retired 10 years ago. And since then I've basically been living off my investments. And so I guess you could say I'm a professional investor in a way, although I think that's probably a little bit of an excessive fancy word to say a rich person. In that course of time, I've done loads of different investments, and some of them were like productive investments. Let's build something, let's create something new in the economy. And some of them were, I'm just going to buy existing assets. I'm going to buy the stock market. I'm going to buy gold. I'm going to buy property. And in the course of those 10 years as an investor, almost all of the times I tried to invest in actually building new productive capacity, increasing the size of the economy, I lost money, basically. Those investments almost all failed. And almost every single time I just bought stuff that already existed, I made a ton of money. The most profitable investment I ever did was probably buying a ton of gold at the beginning of COVID. I made an absolute fortune on that. And I think it's pretty clear that me buying a ton of gold does nothing to help grow the economy. And this raises the question of, why is it that trying to build new stuff is not profitable, but buying existing stuff is profitable? And I think that is because essentially, to make a productive investment, a profitable investment, you need a customer. At the end of the day, it's not enough just for rich people like me to turn up and say, here's the money. You also need businesses to say, well, we know that there's a massive customer base out there, so we want to build new stuff for these people. And I think the story of the last 20, 30 years is basically the impoverishment of the middle class and the ordinary British family, the ordinary American family, European family, Australian family, wherever you are, at the expense of the very rich. And that is why trying to grow the economy has basically failed. And if you look at the parts of the economy that have grown a lot, it's almost exclusively luxury stuff and services for the rich. So I think this sort of drive towards growth and investment will not work unless you deal with the fundamental inequality that exists in our society. And that is because no matter how much money you give to the rich, when they go to businesses and say, here's the money, businesses are going to look and say, well, where is the customer? And if the only people they see who are accumulating a ton of money are very rich people, even if we do build new productive capacity, the only stuff they're going to create is super luxury expensive stuff that you can't afford, that is for the rich, because these guys have the money. And I think what you need to understand is a capitalist economy is very flexible. It will provide stuff specifically for people who have money. You know, I often think, you know, since I started this YouTube channel, people like to tell you, go and be like Mr. Beast. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Beast is, I think, the most watched YouTuber ever. And he does a lot of stuff, like he goes to Africa and he pays for like cheap eye surgery for people in sub-Saharan Africa in poor communities. And these are very cheap surgeries which provide extraordinary, phenomenally significant improvements in life for people in poor communities. So if you would think from an investment perspective, like this should be what we're investing in, right? Here are people who you don't need to put a lot of money in and you can really significantly improve their quality of life. So why don't we do that? Why does capitalism, why do businesses not build healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa? The answer is quite simply because sub-Saharan Africans are poor. And capitalism does not provide investment for poor people because they want it to be profitable. And the reason you should be worried about this is because in the West, in the UK, US, Europe, Australia, increasingly, ordinary people are poor. You are poor. Your future is poor. So if you want growth, if you want investment, you're not going to get it unless you deal with the fundamental fact that you are poor. You need to deal with the distribution. Listen, capitalism has for a long time not provided anything for people in sub-Saharan Africa, people in lots of Latin America, people in lots of Asia, because they were poor people. And it was easy for people like us not to worry about it because we were the comfortable middle class. Now we are poor. The average British person is poor. The only way to get things is to change the distribution. If you don't change the distribution, then all of that new investment will be luxury consumption, luxury properties, luxury holidays for the rich. And that is not going to help you at all. So this relates to the videos we've been doing about the stupidity of growth, which is if you focus only on growth without focusing on distribution, all you do is keep running towards slavery at a faster rate. Listen, there's a fundamental imbalance of power and resources. You are in a competition with the rich for resources. If we're going to invest in this unequal system, businesses will have a choice. Are we going to build healthcare centres in sub-Saharan Africa? Are we going to build affordable homes for poor people in the UK? Or are we going to build a sixth helipad on the top of Elon Musk's fucking skyscraper? You are going to lose that competition. As the rich get richer and richer, they will take the resources and the investment that you need, and the economy will turn into an economy which provides only for them. I don't know if you've seen The Hunger Games. They have this city which has one super luxury centre where all of the rich people live, living lives of unbelievable luxury, surrounded by terrible poverty. Listen, that is what investment looks like in an unequal society. The only way to get investment for you is to get wealth back, to get power back from the super rich into the hands of ordinary families. And the only way to do that is to tax the rich. And I know I say it millions of times, and I'll say it millions of times more, because until we do that, our society will collapse into poverty. Taxation is the only way to escape poverty for your kids and your grandkids. Tax the rich more, tax working people less, save the fucking future. Good luck.